Okay, so welcome to our program where we're going to be doing the entire Choshen Mishpat of the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe. I'm going to go through some of what this course entails. In it, we will also discuss the various details as to learning Shulchan Aruch in general and what is very unique about this program, and thus how you can join it and be able to master this intricate set of laws, which is not only intended for someone who's a dayan or so, but it's intended really for every person who wants to lead an ethical and just life and keep their business according to halacha. As we will see, that there is no person who doesn't come into these laws on a regular basis, at least maybe not necessarily loans, nezikim, if not nezikim, that means damages. If not that, then weights and measurements. If not that, then the laws of hiring workers or hiring a worker for something. I mean, whatever you're going to come into on a regular basis, this is considered the laws that the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch and Choshen Mishpat chose selectively would be what we would call the Orech Chaim of Choshen Mishpat, the most practical daily basis laws that are found in the last section of the Shulchan Aruch, which is generally business laws. But you will see that it touches upon many other aspects than just that. Okay, so let's start with our introduction. This class is Leila Nishmas Chaim Bible Ben Chana. That is, Neshama should have an Aliyah in Gan Eden. We should merit to Tchias HaMesim and the coming of Mashiach now and be reunited with him and all their lost loved ones. So we now, we'll discuss the Shulchan Aruch in general and the Shulchan Aruch from Yosef Karo. So the Shulchan Aruch was written from a rabbi from Spain. Well, actually, he moved later to the land of Israel and settled in the city of Tzfas. His name was Yosef Karo, and he lived towards close in his late 90s, and he had written a summary of the Beit Yosef, which is also a commentary that he wrote on the Torah, where it has the Talmudic explanations and reasonings and Rishonim, the early commentators, on all of the sections of the Torah. The Torah was a scholar who put down in a special order of all the laws from beginning to end. Not all of them, like it doesn't have, certain Tuma and Tara laws, which, the impurity laws that have to do with the Beis Hamikdash, but the laws that are in practice today, let's assume. So he put all that down, and the Beit Yosef wrote a commentary on it, a very long commentary. And in 1 year, he rewrote the whole Shulchan Aruch. And his intention was to study the Shulchan Aruch every 30 days. And that would be that every person would be studying the Shulchan Aruch every 30 days. Now, the Shulchan Aruch is broken into 4 general sections, Orech Chaim, which is to do with laws that have to do with, like, on a daily basis, like keeping Shabbos and davening, holidays, etc. Then you have Yordeh, which includes kashrus laws, mikveh laws, conversion laws, the laws of bris milah, laws of vows, and many others, agricultural laws. That's in Yordeh. The laws of Even HaEzer, the 3rd section of the Shulchan Aruch, is mainly to do with family life and has to do with marriage, divorce, chalitza, yibum. These are laws that have to do with family, determining Jewishness, a husband missing. They're very complex subjects and very severe subjects, because if they are not done properly, it could be possibly bringing forth illegitimate children in the future or other grave concerns. And then the 4th section of the Shulchan Aruch is the section called Choshen Mishpat, which is the monetary discussions. However, it's not only limited to that. Now, the Rabbi Yosef Karo was the cutoff between the early Rishonim period till the Achronim period. The Achronim period started after the Shulchan Aruch and onwards. So the Rishonim would be commentators like Yeah, like after Rashi, the Tosos and Rambam, Maimonides, the Rif, Rabbeinu Alfasi, the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher. These are very famous commentators either on the Gemara or they wrote their own commentaries, and they all were known to have Ruach HaKodesh. They had special divine help in their learning and in their teaching and their writings, and we consider the writings of the Rishon very, very valued and very, we take it very heavy, their words. And they are the commentators on the Gemara. The Gemara is the foundation of our halachic system, halachic regime, right? So the Shulchan Aruch was written in the 1400s. Well, you could say the 1440 or so. I don't have the exact number of the year exactly to my memory. But after that, after the Shulchan Aruch was written, and you see now Rabbi Yosef Karo intends to have the Shulchan Aruch written in learned and studied every 30 days. In practice, nobody today is fulfilling that will of the Yosef Karo. Perhaps one reason is because there were so many commentators that were added to the Shulchan Aruch, including the famous Ramah, Moshe Isserlis, who brings the Ashkenazic views, and then after that, all the different, the Shach and the Taz, and the Magen Avram, and the Bir Agra, the Chelkas Mechokik, and the Beit Shmuel, so many different commentators. They made it an endless sea of information and making it way beyond the average means of a typical Torah scholar to be able to go through the whole Shulchan Aruch. Just to go through the Shulchan Aruch without the commentators is something which would be extremely rare, even if a very outstanding Torah scholar probably does not even fulfill the intent that Rabbi Yosef Karo wanted, that everyone should go through the Shulchan Aruch every 30 days. It's rare to find someone who went through it even once in their lifetime, the whole Shulchan Aruch. All right, so what is discussed in Choshen Mishpat? Does it have similarities to secular law? So these are two general questions. Let's start off with the primary discussions of Choshen Mishpat is business and monetary law. That's the primary discussion. But it's not limited to that. There's also ethical questions which are beyond the letter of the law. There's also altruistic questions in Jewish society. So there are cases that discuss, let's say, kashrus, believe it or not. There are kosher, like consuming kosher laws that we learn in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and Choshen Mishpat, where it talks about various things which can be a danger. So let's say keeping food or drink in a metal can overnight, or well, when we get into there, of course. But these are an example where you have even kosher, or you have laws that have to do with tradition, and then we have laws of altruistic questions that maybe secular law would not require whatsoever. Person does not have to go out of the way to fulfill some specific law, but yet to Jewish requirement they would need to do so. Okay, so then we could come upon questions which is stealing. What is the definition of stealing? There's a different question which wasn't really openly addressed in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which in the course of the classes that I'll be going to, which is called intellectual property. How do you steal intellectual property? Is that considered stealing? Do you need to actually steal a physical item, or stealing an idea from someone is also considered stealing? So Choshen Mishpat, the Shulchan Aruch, addresses various questions, and of course the later Achronim and the later responsive from the Gedolei Yisrael address the more questions that came up in modern society, and they also have a view of Das Torah, a view of what Torah says on it. There's also secular laws that have place in halacha, and this is the thing called Dina de Malchus Dina, which means the law of the land is the law. There's also a concept called Minhag Hamadina, the custom of the land. These themes are quite complex, and we will discuss in the relevant time. So one of the things that will start off in the course is the topic of called loans, where we'll learn all 40 subsections, sifim of the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. So one question that he doesn't openly address there, which we will, of course, in the classes go through very thoroughly, is the topic of bankruptcy, which was a later law. It started with a British law that had to do with people being sold as slaves and being extorted because they couldn't come up with debt. They couldn't come up paying their debt. So because of that, they cut the hand off, or all types to try to sell them to slavery. So British law made this idea of bankruptcy law, which later became, English law, and became into European law and in United States law. And there are different countries have different views on various stages of the bankruptcy law. So what is halacha? Does halacha recognize bankruptcy law, for example? Maybe you'll say it's the law of the land and that's it, and it's acceptable. Or does halacha say not necessarily? So I'm just, without going into all these topics, which we will go in their proper time, I just say that is part of the goal to study the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Go through it very thoroughly. Go through the altruistic questions, go through the halachic questions, the monetary laws, go through the ethical questions. Like another topic in ethical questions is the pain of animals, which is discussed in Tsar Balei Chaim. If you have an animal and what type of load to put on it, you have to help when you see someone trying to put the heavy load on the animal and it's not getting it, you have to help. So there are topics which are not necessarily addressed openly they're not openly addressed in the halacha. I'm sorry, they don't seem to be to do with business ethic, business and monetary laws, but yet they are monetary law. These are ethical questions which are addressed in Choshen Mishpat as well. Okay, who is this course intended for? Does one need to have Semicha to join this course? The answer in short is it's addressed for anybody who wants to learn practical halacha in an advanced and serious setting, and they're committed. It's very difficult to commit to doing something when you're learning it by yourself. It's very difficult to commit to something when you don't have a teacher who's pushing you to accomplish something. It's difficult to learn something when the topic itself is somewhat complex. So you would want to learn with somebody who's done a tremendous amount of preparation and study this and has first-hand experience with this. And also the purpose of this course is I'm going to bring rabbis who are veteran senior dayanim and from different communities, a few different communities where they have dealt many times with many din Torahs, and they not only know the laws but they breathe it and they truly live it, and they will enlighten your understanding of these laws, even if you were to study the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch very thoroughly and in depth. But when you have different rabbanim who come and present the questions and the issues and the solutions, it's going to really give you whet your appetite to learn it more in depth and have the learning in your hand that you'll be able to always remember it. So it's really for anybody. You don't need to have Semicha in order to join the course. One who has Semicha, it's even better. You could say, because you have Semicha and now you're doing another serious course, you're showing how real serious you take your Semicha for. It's not something that you did as a piece of paper and that's it. You learned some the kitchen laws, and maybe people will ask you one or two times some of these halachas of the kitchen. Maybe they won't. But but when you're saying, I want to move forward. I want to also start learning stuff that I'm not so familiar with. I want to learn the business ethic laws, and it has to do. And by the way, though, as I mentioned, there's kashrus laws even in Choshen Mishpat. Believe it, as funny as it sounds, but there are, and there's a reason for that. And so you're broadening your general knowledge, and you'll be of much help to someone who will ask you a question, or even if they're not going to ask you, you know what a question is. You're going to know when there's a need of a din Torah, when there's a need to settle things in another way, when is there just you might be doing something wrong and you don't want to do something prohibited, or you can help somebody who's asking of your advice. So there's always going to be discussions. There's always going to be arguments, and there's always going to be questions. It's just this is the way Hashem created this world. So it's of course very valuable if you have Semicha, but you don't have to have Semicha to join the course. It is always helpful to have a stronger background, as one might be able to advance these studies and help others with this valuable information. So you don't need to have Semicha as long as you're committed and you want to give it a real shot. It's going to be very helpful to you. The way I'm starting this course is that you don't have to commit to the entire thing and you pay everything up front. No, we can start it as a month by month commitment. You want to see if this is too much for you, Are you able to, you'll see. And you can commit 1 month at a time, but definitely it's really for anybody who really wants to advance their learning and do a real serious learning and really get some clarity out of these topics. So now the question you'll ask is, why was the study of the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch chosen for our Choshen Mishpat? Is this because this is specifically a Chabad program and we only study the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch or so? The answer is no. It's not intended only for a Chabad person, a person who Chabad. They will definitely benefit by learning the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat. But it's not intended only for a Chabad person. It's intended for anybody, again, as we want to really learn these laws in depth. And people who study Choshen Mishpat and are great Dayanim, and they have mastery of these laws, there isn't a single one who doesn't study the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, because the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, as I mentioned, is a condensed form of covering all the most relevant laws of Choshen Mishpat. The Alter Rebbe has his own style. He brings his own reasoning in the rulings. As we mentioned earlier, Rabbi Yosef Karo's Shulchan Aruch was written as a summary of his commentary that he wrote on the Torah, the Beit Yosef, which over there he brings all the reasons and stuff. And to study the Beit Yosef is a tremendous amount of material. And the Shulchan Aruch, he wrote the laws without the reasons. The Alter Rebbe in his Shulchan Aruch, and the Alter Rebbe was actually instructed by the Magid and Mezrich to write a Shulchan Aruch which will have the reasonings in them, and it will also cover maybe the opinions of other views, and in a later time in his life even took the views of the Kabbalists that he started to add in his later section of Shulchan Aruch. Unfortunately, we didn't receive all of it, and it was a big fire, and we lost a lot of the manuscripts of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. But the Choshen Mishpat section, we do have the intention of how it was done to be in its completeness. And as we said, it was really intended to cover the laws that are most pertinent. So any serious student of Choshen Mishpat would have to study the Alter Rebbe Choshen Mishpat laws from beginning to end. Now, does that mean it's a replacement of the entire Choshen Mishpat of the Beit Yosef? It's not a replacement of it by any means, no. But what it is that, again, if you have 7 or so years to study Choshen Mishpat laws in depth, you should do it, because there's an obligation to learn all of the Torah. But on the other hand, to study the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch of Choshen Mishpat and cover it in a group and get tested on it on all 13 sections, and be able to also comment, see what the Alter Rebbe would hold on more modern questions as we address them in the topics that we will go through, it's a great opportunity at the same time. And we'll also, since we are bringing the Alter Rebbe, we'll of course bring on many other contemporary poskim. And of course, since I'm bringing Alter Rebbe, of course I'll bring his grandson when he in various places, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitch Rebbe, where he has many tshuvas on the topics of Choshen Mishpat. And there are letters also from the Lubavitch Rebbe, the seventh Lubavitch Rebbe, the Siador. We have his certain letters, like there's a fascinating letter which he discusses on the laws of loans, and where he goes through a question where somebody sent books to someone who was expecting payment, and they said that's considering pressuring them to pay a loan or so. Isn't that prohibited? He wrote a beautiful letter to them explaining the parameters of these laws of loans and how it works and why it's not a problem over there. So we will, of course, go through, when it's relevant, letters from the Rebbe as well. We'll go through many poskim. The intent is not to leave anyone out. We want to include everyone and get as much valuable information as we can. I will say, while I'm mentioning, that in addition to studying the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, there's an English one which you should buy, the white version. I think there's a picture of it earlier. Yeah, it was over here, this one. I think Semicha is an English translated. There's also other Sfarim that I'm going to be regularly going through, like the Avos Chesed written by the Mishnah, the Chafetz Chaim, where he wrote a beautiful sefer on the laws of loans, and he also touches the ethical issues of it. And so he goes through the monetary parts and the ethical parts, and the part of the chesed, the gemilas chesed, the kindness that you have to do in the loan. And we will go through that. There's also a very beautiful sefer, which is a commentary on the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Imre and Yaakov from Yaakov Stern, where he also raises many different opinions and commentators and questions, and he learns the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Choshen Mishpat in depth, and he felt that it's such an invaluable work that he chose specifically, although he's a Vishnitz Chassid, he specifically wanted to work on a set of the Alter Rebbe's Choshen Mishpat. And of course, there's also a set called, was written by Rabbi Yaakov Bloy, which is a 10-volume set on the laws of Choshen Mishpat, and I'll be quoting that. It's called Pischei Choshen. I'll be quoting that quite often. I'm going to be writing summaries, and the summaries, of course, will be giving the sources that I mentioned in the shir, in the classes, where one can also, in addition to studying, even though you're reading the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and you have the English translation, you have notes, I'll be going through a lot of extra points which will be addressing these issues. And you'll have a summary of it all in a very clear fashion. Okay, move that. Okay, now, how much time is needed to commit to this course? Does it require the same as a Semicha course, which prefers at least 10 hours a week? And when I say at least 10 hours a week, it's because when I learned Semicha in 770, the Rosh Hashiva, and it was the Hoyra, was the instruction from the Hanhala, going back, from the earliest years, and the Lubavitch Rebbe was instructed how the Seder and the Tamchei Tanim 770 Semicha should be, is that they should learn Gemara in the morning for 3 hours, or more, whatever, the morning hour, they learn the Chassidus, they learn the Gemara, and the afternoon should be Semicha. So they would learn 3:15 p.m. Well, actually, it's 3:30 because you do Mincha at 3:15, but 3:30 till 6:45, that's the learning time for Semicha. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe they learn on their own. I don't think it's a requirement to learn Semicha on Friday or on Shabbos, but yeah, so if you do the math, 3 hours times 5 is 15, and then another about 30 minutes, 15 minutes a day. Okay, so you got yourself about 16 or so hours at least of Semicha over there. And unfortunately, in some Semicha programs, they don't fulfill that instructive of doing morning hours learning Gemara independently for the sake of learning Gemara. Rather, they just do Gemara, in place that they just do Semicha the whole day, and you just your mind gets sogged out from just learning the same topic all day long. So they could be doing Semicha for not 16 or 17 hours. They might be doing for 20. I don't mean a day. I mean a week. So instead of doing 17 or hours of Semicha a week, they could be doing maybe 25, 30, maybe stretching it 35 hours a week of Semicha learning. That's something that's not the intention of this program. My goal is that you only need to put, now if you're studying for a test, you want to do more time, so then of course there could be more time to it. But on a regular, typical basis, I would say in the atmosphere of a student, you should learn 2 or more hours a week of self-study. And this is in addition to coming to a shir. So if I'm giving a shir on Sunday, let's say I'm going to give a shir 1 hour, and then let's say I'm going to give a Wednesday class of 30 minutes. I purposely don't want to necessarily give a longer class on Wednesday, coming closer to Shabbos, whatever. But it'll be a different style class. So you listen to those classes and you do your own study, because I would not rely on only listening to a class, because I'm purposely not going to read the Shulchan Aruch and translate word by word, because you have your books. But we will go over some of the points of the Sifim that we want to talk about, the subsections, and then we'll discuss modern shilas and different questions which come up and are relevant to the topics and they're not necessarily discussed open in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. So if you do 2 hours of self-study, roughly, and then another hour and a half of classes, so you're giving about 3.5 hours, say 4 hours to another bit of extra study, reading the notes or so, reviewing it, calling, speaking it over. 4 hours, let's say, a week, if you put everything together. If one would like to delve in greater depth into the lessons and has the extra time, there will be options of doing so with extra material provided. For example, if they want to study tshuva from Moshe Feinstein on the topic of bankruptcy, I can send it to them. It might take you a good hour just to read one tshuva, one single thing, but that's if you know how to, study that. But again, even if you don't have a mastery of Hebrew translation studies, you can suffice with the English material that will also be provided. But again, there is room that you can do more than 4 hours study a week. But it also, you should be fine if you limit it to 3 hours, 3.5 to 4 hours a week. You can also be fine with that. Again, if we're studying for a final test, of course, it might be a good idea to add more time so that you're getting tested by you want to be ready for it. But in general, it's not an overdose of material. I understand that people are busy. They have a parnasa they need to make. They have family or various things you're involved in. Everybody's busy in their own topics, but it's important to also have a mastery of halacha as well. The intent of this course is not to replace one's already set daily studying, which is including and not limited to Chumash Rashi of the day. If a guy's learning Semicha, forget this program, you're learning Semicha to be a rabbi. And as a result, you're putting yourself only into that. You don't end up doing the Chumash Rashi of the day, Natanya of the day, Rambam, or only once in a while you do it. You're not doing Yom Yom, not doing Chassidus, not learning a Dvar Torah on the Parsha, not doing a tractate for, you should learn a tractate of Gemara every year. And it comes on the expense of that. That's a difficult decision over there. It's good to become a rabbi, to learn these programs, but you also want to have your daily set schedules of learning, which should not be deducted from on account of this learning. So therefore, you want to from time to time learn the laws of Shabbos or the laws of Yom Tov. You're coming to Rosh Hashanah. How do the tkiyas, the sounding of the shofar blast, how long do they need to be? You might want to have some time to prepare those things as well. To be a good Jew, you have to know those things as well. So again, the intent of this is to be realistic, to be able to really master this study, not cram our head and try to finish as in some very quick amount of time, or not review it properly and therefore forget what we learned. And also just to learn it on a very narrow way of looking at things, and not really have the yesodis, the foundations and the sources, and not going through it and learning the contemporary poskim. So you would say, I learned the laws of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, but I have no idea about how it applies to some of the modern questions. I have no idea how to apply if I can borrow from, this type of lender, or if I'm allowed to withhold a bank. I don't know. I don't know how bankruptcy laws apply. I don't know any of these things apply. That wouldn't be good also. So that's part of the intent, is to have a very well-rounded structure of learning, also managing your regular studies and having a very detailed and tailored custom way of learning in this program, where you'll really have clarity on the contemporary poskim and a very thorough understanding of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which is classic to all the opinions. What is the style of this course? Okay, so we basically discussed earlier, but here we'll really just put it in a summary. The text from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which is translated also into English. So we learn that. You learn it on your own in general. You're learning it, you're saying. I'm going to say, okay, this week you're going to be on a WhatsApp group or an email group. It depends on what you prefer. And you'll say, this is what you need to cover this week. I'll send it the week ahead of time. Start preparing this. And then the class is going to be on this. It'll be, so you're studying well the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. You're getting familiar with it. There will be 1 to 2 classes a week on reviewing and learning, and also discussing modern shilas questions, which are not addressed in the early text of the Alter Rebbe, right? So, for example, when I say 1 to 2 classes a week, I really like to do 2 a week, but it is possible that some weeks we only can do 1 week, 1 a week for whatever the reason may be. But again, one class is usually an hour long, and the other one could be less than an hour. Maybe it's going to be 30 minutes. If there's a big need, so we'll do it. Another 1 hour class. We do 2 1-hour classes that week. So it depends on where we're holding and what exact topic we're studying at that time. And if it's Yom Tovim, I don't want to say no learning altogether or so, but we'll have an easy schedule or so, depending on the situation and where we're holding. Okay. There will be written summaries towards the end of finishing a set of halachas. So in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Choshen Mishpat, there are 13 sections of laws, starting with loans, then goes on to testimony of witnesses and contracts, right? And it goes, damages and all the different laws and nizikim of damaging someone's property or hurting somebody. Can a person put themselves at risk to help someone else? And these are ethical questions, but again, at every set of laws, there will be a quiz, right? And a written quiz. And there will also be a summary that I wrote, and I'll send out to you, where you can review some of the topics that we discussed in the classes. And it will be very helpful as review, and also of the review of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and in general, a review of the classes. But it's not to replace studying the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch from the text itself. A final test on all the material from prominent posting. I will say like this: there are a couple that I'm considering right now. There's one that I'm considering from the United States, and I have 2 or 3 that I'm considering from the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael. And they're all extremely qualified. And I'm just seeing, really, I want to have someone who can also give a couple of classes. I don't want that they're just going to come at the end of the whole program and test you guys. I want them to get familiar with you guys, and they're going to give a few classes in the middle of our studies. And they are breathing, walking the Shulchan Aruch inside out individuals. These are prominent Rabbanim who mastery of these laws and the other contemporary poskim and their walking encyclopedia, and they're magnificent, I just say human beings, and these are incredible people. And hopefully, even though if I'm only going to have one rabbi give the final test, and there will be a certificate that will be awarded, in addition to that, I do want to have some other dayanim from other communities also test. So there's not test, but give classes in general on how to translate these laws that we're studying into real cases and real scenarios, and how they deal with it in their based in or in their community or in their own personal lives. Okay. That's the general style of the course. At the moment, we're looking for, it's 10 months. The idea is it would finish Rosh Chodesh Iyar right after Pesach of next year. So there's definitely room to cover it in a very thorough way. We don't want to take it too long. I thought out very carefully how much time to put on it, not too quick, not too slow. Again, we're going to be doing a lot more than the basic text of the Alter of Shulchan Aruch, and therefore you could say that it's also very quick at the pace that we will be going to finish it at that time. All right. This is a sample of some topics that we would be learning on the topic of loans. And again, a sample because there are many other stuff. And okay, here's just an example. We'll go through the mitzvah of lending and setting up a gamach, right? And maybe when you don't need to give a loan to someone, let's say you don't trust the person, you know they have a very terrible reputation. Is there still a mitzvah to give them a loan? All right, so I'm just a general topic, right? The obligation of the borrower to pay back his loan, right? So is there any time he's off the hook? Say, I don't have the money, I'm sorry, I lost my job, I don't need to pay now. I don't know. So we'll go through it. Is there a difference between borrowing money or owing money? Okay, that's another topic. The Rebbe openly discusses these topics, but there's also many contemporary issues which we will touch as well. The time and the place of repaying a loan. Is there a certain amount of time that if it passes, that I don't know, that you have to pay it in at a certain date if there was no specific intention of how long it needed to be? You need to document your loans. We'll talk about how to do a loan properly. How do you give a loan in a way that's a halachic proper loan? Now, by the way, another topic of its own, which I'm not really addressing right now, would be heteriska or ribis, collecting interest, which is forbidden to collect interest from a Jew, to lend or collect from a Jew. Heteriska is a form where you can make what looks to be something like a loan, but it really has the intent of an investment. And there is a chance that you could jeopardize your money in the return, but there is a return. You're basically getting a percentage. So we're not really focusing on those laws in this section of loans because the Alter Rebbe is separated. That's another topic of its own. And here we're learning the laws of loans. However, I will, in the course of the classes, address some issues of heteriska as well. But that will not be the primary topic, and it would be a large topic of its own, which is well worth studying in a different course. But again, very few scholars have a very strong clarity of the laws of ribis and heteriska properly, but we will address some of the topics. And then collecting a loan by grabbing or by what's called shibud Reb Nassan, which is a halachic concept. Let's say I owe money to Ruvain, and Ruvain owes to Shimon. So shibud Reb Nassan is this concept of Gemara, which is instead of me paying Ruvain pays Shimon, let me pay directly Shimon, who Ruvain owes to. We'll talk about that and when we use it and when we don't use it. Types of loans and lenders, and also in secular law, those different things. So we have to compare and contrast. I know understand some of the people who join this course are very expert in loans and stuff, and they can add a lot of, they can ask questions and make it more difficult for me to do a lot of extra research on these topics. But Bezrat Hashem will come to a lot of clarity on these issues. Bezrat Hashem. We'll talk about the laws of collateral, okay, which is a very large topic in halacha of its own. Paying a debt through heirs, that's something get complicated. There's money to owe, the person passed away, there are heirs. How does that work? What if you owe many people who prior, do you have to pay on behalf of a deceased one if you're an heir? It's another interesting topic. Selling a loan document to a third party, that's another interesting topic where we have, where it's being used a lot. You have a post-dated check, and they're not going to wait 6 months to get your check. So it's $1,000, you'll sell it for $980 to someone who's willing to buy it. Is that ribis? Is that allowed? If it's allowed, can it be done? Can it be done in a way proper, and is there a way that it would not be allowed to be done properly? Believe it or not, the answer is yes. There's different ways how it can be done, and depending on that, might make the difference of if it's permissible or not. There's something called kinyan mamid shalash, and transferring a debt through three parties. We'll discuss these topics. Forgiving a debt. Do you need to let them know if you're forgiving debt? Can you then consider it retroactively, like you gave Meiser, you gave tithing on their behalf if you forgave the debt? Also, guarantors, an obligation on a default. So what exactly is their obligation? If you are asked to ever be a guarantor, what you need to know. Is there a difference of halacha and secular law on various topics in these matters? What if there's a contradiction between halacha and secular law? What do we do in these cases? Collecting from the guarantor or the borrower, and when maybe it's a complicated case, when you didn't clearly specify in the contract, and there's an argument between them who you should go after. Okay, let's move on. Will I receive the certificate at the end of the course? I did mention this in short before. Is this considered Yadin Yadin? Okay, so let's go number one. All who pass the course by doing all the quizzes, if you didn't pass the quiz, there's an option to redo it or so. And and the test. So when you pass the quizzes and you pass the final test by the certifying posik, yes, you will receive the certificate that you mastered this topic of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Choshen Mishpat and the contemporary poskim that are relevant to. That will be done, signed by myself and also by the certifying posik. The title Yadin Yadin. Okay, so I got Yadin Yadin for David Shachar. I also got from some other rabbis, Nehemiah Goldberg and some other rabbanim later on, when I was mastering more when I was getting more involved in the topic of Eben Ezra, which we spoke about earlier. But on Choshen Mishpat alone, I was tested by Rabbi David Shachar. It was I think 4 tests we had. Each one was like 6 hours. Anyways, so I asked him, is there possible to call the topic of Yadin Yadin to mastering the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Choshen Mishpat with contemporary poskim? And he said, no, you can't call it that because there's still more topics, which is traditionally considered as Yadin Yadin. However, it's absolutely a mandatory thing that a person should not be transgressing various laws simply because they don't know them. So it's very important to say this is not an official Yadin Yadin course, but on the other hand, if one has an interest to pursuing Yadin Yadin, this can only be of great help. And generally, Yadin Yadin is a very broad category. What exactly is Semicha for being a judge include? But to be quite honest, there are different opinions amongst the various rabbis who give the test. Usually they would dedicate minimal 2 years into Choshen Mishpat, and then depending on if the rabbi is fluent in doing divorce, and hopefully you don't need to do divorce, but but the point is that the laws of, just moved to the wrong page, my mistake. The laws of marriage, the laws of Jewish status, the laws of heteraguna, the laws of divorce, all those things, mamzerim, illegitimate children, those laws are very complex, and they are studied in the course of a couple of years on Eben Ezra. So to say, once when I was learning in Brazil, when I was on Shlichus there, I asked the Maradaster of Shamayenda, I asked him, how do you become a Rav? I asked him, I was maybe 20 years old at the time. I asked him, so how does one become a Rav? Because he was a Maradaster, he still is, he's the Maradaster of the community there. So he told me there's no catalog for this topic. It's just it's a life of study and it's a life of commitment. I also am involved in the organization called Ask the Rav Com, with under the auspices of the Beis Din of Crown Heights Beis Din, Rav Yosef Yishaya Bron Shlita. So I work with him on a regular basis, answering shilas. I answer the shilas, I write them down, it gets sent to him. He looks over, approves of it, sends it out. So I've gotten a tremendous amount of shimish through him. And I will say that over the years, you see that you can't say that one size fits all and what exactly works for one. It's a tremendous learning experience, and it's a very slow experience. But again, each thing is a thing for itself. So learning the Alter Rebbe Choshen Mishpat, you will have the credit of going through it and doing what most rabbis of most communities have never done. They didn't even study the whole Alter Rebbe's Choshen Mishpat Shulchan Aruch, and let alone get tested on it and discuss the contemporary poskim on it. So how much more so layman? So you have the opportunity to do something which will be a tremendous wealth of information to you, and it will benefit you not only on your knowledge basis, but it'll also benefit you on ethics. It'll benefit you on avoiding things what you will regret if you would have done them wrong. You'll know if you're doing something wrong. Somebody steals money from you, you have the opportunity to take money from them, and no one will know. Are you allowed to? It's a question that's discussed in halacha. So I'm just saying there's so many issues that you do alone. You did it not according to halacha. You get yourself into a lot of problems. I'm not even talking about interest and ribs. I'm talking about how it should be done properly to avoid problems, to neighbor issues. All of these issues, you'll only benefit from it. Choshen Mishpat is something that you want to be on the learning perspective, not on the asking. You don't want to be the one who has to ask the question when some problematic situation came up. You want to be in a situation where you're learning and you know how to avoid. It's like a self-defense. You want to avoid problems. And by doing this, you're avoiding isurim, prohibitions. You're avoiding arguments and fights with people. You're avoiding all this. Oh Hashem, keep your just the aggravation involved. Taking this course will be well worth just one little problem you could get yourself into without discovering all this information. So Bezrat Hashem, you're going to be very happy. We're gonna learn a lot. All right, how do I sign up for this course? The number one question, right? We put it at the very end. No, it's not the number one question, but we need to have you guys sign up. It's very important to sign up for various reasons. I'm going to send a paper, electronic paper. You don't have to type it or print it. Well, you just have to type the answers. You don't have to print it out, and it'll be your registration. In it are the questions that you will be asked, very basic questions. I want to know what your background is in studying in Torah, in yeshiva, if you had it, whatever it may be. Do you have Semicha or whatever? And what is your contact number? How can I get a hold of you? You have an email. What is your phone number? If I need to contact you, I'm not going to put you on any large email list or sell your name to someone. No, not at all. Just need to be able to contact you directly if you want to join with us. There is also a price for participating in the course. If there is need to lower the price, please speak with me. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed about it. No student will be turned away for a lack of funding. On the other hand, if someone would like to pay the full price, that's just to keep this program Bezrat Hashem going and strong, and so I can have the extra funding to also invest more of my time into it. I already am going to invest a tremendous amount of time, but I can get also other Rabbanim to come, and I don't like to not pay them anything for their time. They're busy people. So Bezrat Hashem, I want to make this very successful. So there is a cost to make anything good. When you give money to something, you're more serious about it, and you will be more committed to it. Again, if there's a lack of funds or so, you let me know, and we'll try to work out something. And that's how to start the program. So it's Bezrat Hashem going to be starting. There should be a very a short shiur that will take place this coming Wednesday, meaning this Wednesday, which is the first of June. I'm sorry, the 1st of July. So we'll have a shiur then, and generally try to keep it Sundays and Wednesdays. So I hope you can join this course, and I look forward to learning with you. And I think you'll have an amazing opportunity of growing your knowledge and spiritually, and have a tremendous amount of growth from this. So, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to really have we're not going to regret it. So please try to be quick about just registering so that it will be able to make sure you're with us, and you'll have a recording, you'll have access to all the classes, the recorded classes, you'll get the emails, and you'll be on the WhatsApp group, and there's a lot what to do. So, okay, thank you very much. May we merit only Besuras Tovas, good news, Mashiach now.